Hello, APAC marketers. I'm here today with Raymond Segismundo, who's got a lot of cool experience with performance marketing. So I'm really excited to learn from him. Raymond, can you just give us a quick intro?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Raymond. Most recently, I was the head of performance marketing for Deliveroo for the Middle East and APAC. Before that, I was at Citibank, I was at Walmart, I was at Choke, leading performance marketing there as well.
Can you tell us how you think about the difference in approach when doing marketing campaigns in the States versus how you've been doing it in APAC?
Sure. So I guess the main difference in the approach is with your targeting and your creative messaging. So for certain markets, like let's say in the US, there's a large Hispanic population. So you would create targeting and creatives that cater to the Hispanic population. And in APAC, there's a lot of different target markets and demographics and I guess consumer behavior. So for example, in Singapore, people are more price sensitive. So you'd probably show them a creative that has a promotion or a discount. And in a market like maybe a Thailand or Indonesia, you might probably have a creative that like builds on people's emotions to get them to either purchase your product or sign up for your email list or whatnot. So it just really depends on the market. And the way I usually test that is I run creative testing to try to understand how each market functions based on my assumptions. So for example, in certain markets, I may assume that they're more quality oriented. So they want higher quality and they don't really care about the price. And I was often proven wrong. They're more value oriented.
What's a way for you to definitively know whether that is the way that market responds? Like when you do the testing between, let's say, pricing and emotion, is the emotion one like crazy outperforming or is it just like a small amount, but that's enough for you to invest more in that type of creative?
Yeah, so the way I do that is I like to measure statistical significance based on a chi-square test. So I like putting some metrics behind it to try to understand whether or not it's statistically significant. So it really depends on the test. Some are crazy better in terms of performance. Some of them are just a little bit better, but using some sort of statistical model will really help you understand whether or not it's just noise or really I guess, a difference in how that market reacts to that messaging.
Got it. Got it. So at the beginning of any stage is just like tons and tons of testing and letting the data and the market tell you what kind of direction you should go in, and then just double, triple down on the ones where you're getting the response that you want.
Yep. Yep, exactly. And I guess you just need to constantly test to try to, I guess, revalidate your assumptions because a market might perform a certain way at one point, but in like, let's say in a year's time, it might be completely different. So the example here is in India. Previously, people weren't really making digital transactions, and then suddenly the government demonetized all their notes and everyone went digital. So now everyone's like acting in a certain way online.
Got it. Got it. Okay. And you don't put a ceiling on the budget on that, where it's like, I want to test this, but I don't want to spend more than X. Just like, I want to be sure about this insight.
So it really depends on how much you're comfortable with. Usually when I run tests, it's 20% of my entire budget. The 80% should cater and carry the weight of your performance, and then you'll use the additional 20% to run your own initiatives, gamble on new settings, new ad formats, and then once that is performing really, really well, you absorb that into the 80%, and then you use another 20%. So you're constantly testing new ad formats, targeting, and new channels and whatnot.
The thing that I always hear about when you're doing that kind of creative testing is, you can do the testing on the front end or the top of the funnel where you get some idea on the click-through rate and I guess some of the top of funnel metrics. But then in some businesses where the payback is a bit longer than, a couple days to a week, like how do you make sure all of that connects, because you could be seeing some good stuff at the top end, but then when you do that cohort all the way through, like you don't have the full confidence until the thing plays out. So how do you balance those two things?
Yeah, so I guess what you need to do is set up a attribution with a multi-touch attribution. Like obviously in the beginning, you won't have some sort of attribution in place. So the last click attribution is the one where you should start off with, but once you start gathering data, you should have some sort of multi-touch attribution. A lot of the places I work for would have a higher weightage with a first touch point. That might be either a first click or a first view. And then the last click and everything else in between would have some sort of a percentage weightage in the attribution model. Once you have that in place, then you could be more confident on the results of the tests that you've run and I guess the ad formats you have, upper funnel and all the way down the funnel as well.
I want to ask you a question about how you think about expanding into new markets. So a lot of the people watching this are probably, regional leaders in APAC. And one of the questions that I'm sure is on their mind is how do I, when I open up a new market, like what are the tactics or how do I set up that strategy? So this is something you've done from a performance marketing perspective. Can you walk us through how market expansion works and how you set up a performance marketing strategy within markets?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I launch a new market, so for example, when I was at Deliveroo, we launched Taiwan and Kuwait. What we look at first is the historical data of similar cities. So for example, or similar countries. So for example, in Kuwait, we use UAE. For Taiwan, we use Hong Kong. And we looked at what performs really, really well in that market. And then what we do is we try to localize it based on our market research and understanding of that new market and create some sort of digital strategy based on that. Obviously, with digital marketing, you need to test and learn and try to understand what really works and what doesn't work. And once you have that campaign running for at least 2 weeks, you'll understand, hey, is it similar to that market you assume to be similar? If it is, then great. If it's not, what's working, scale that up. What's not working, scale that down. And then you'll have a better strategy 2, 3, 4 weeks down the line after you launch that new market. Okay, so the example in Taiwan is the behavior in Taiwan is people have restaurants near where they live, so they would rather walk around and just pick it up themselves. So a message calling out the minimum order value would like restrict the amount of clicks you would get because the minimum order value in Taiwan was like higher than how much they're comfortable to pay. So I think people were comfortable to pay maybe 80 Taiwanese dollars per meal. Our minimum order value was like maybe 200. So people were more, I guess, they would click and then they'll be like, oh shit, it's 200 Taiwanese dollars. I'm just gonna walk down and buy my own food.
Okay, so when you start in a new market, it sounds like there's a lot of campaigns that you have to set up. Can you tell us how setting up like creatives and the copy for all this works?
Yeah, so it depends on the company. So usually there's creative teams in-house that you'll have to brief and create creatives. But sometimes there are tools available off the shelf in the market that would allow you to scale and test creatives. So for example, I'm not selling Smartly, but Smartly has a creative template that can use your product feeds and help you create multiple variations of creative so that you could instantly launch paid social campaigns on Facebook and Instagram. So that's what a lot of advertisers are using. Other advertisers would just rely on their creative teams and create creatives for their campaigns.
So you've worked in a lot of companies where they're pretty competitive, one might even say like red ocean markets. So from the outside, it just looks like these companies are spending tons and tons of money to get market share. Can you give us an insight into like, what does that mean when you're the performance marketer at a company in a very competitive space? How do you respond to the competition? Is that even something you think about? Is like constantly thinking about budget a thing? Can you just give us like the view inside a competitive market?
Yeah, so I guess it's always something I'm thinking of, especially for paid search, because when the competitors have higher budgets, obviously they're bidding higher for the keywords, which will drive up my cost per click overall. So in that scenario, what myself and my team usually do is we try to make the ads that we're currently running more relevant and improving the quality score overall, just so that we pay less for the click and we're always showing up as either position 1 or position 2 on Google search results. But yeah, I guess overall, knowing what your competitor is doing is really important. So there's a lot of competitive analysis tools that we like to use to see what the types of creatives the competitors are using, what kind of budgets they have. And I guess we kind of react proactively before we start seeing a negative impact to our campaign so that we're always ahead of the curve.
Yeah. Is this a daily thing where you're like, hey, let's have a meeting about what these guys are doing? Or is it weekly? What practically, how do you review that?
So it depends. So usually in my case, I look at it on a weekly basis to try to understand the competitive landscape. But it might become daily if, let's say, a C-level or someone is like raising it to me and saying, hey, look at this competitor, they're bidding on your keyword, they're showing up as number 1, we need to win this keyword. That's when we kind of look at it on a daily basis.
Yeah, and then when that happens, you're like, well, give me more money and just we'll get there.
Yeah, exactly. And then telling them how much more money
You would take.
we yeah.
Cool. There's a question around the tools and the tech stack that you use. So
Yeah.
we talked a bit about like creative automation tools. Like what else is in your performance marketing tech stack?
Yeah. So it really depends on the company and how
Yep.
large their budget is. So if let's say you're working for a company with not that much ad spend, they don't have that much deep pockets, obviously you would need to use what's available for you. So that would be the Google Excels, using Google AdWords scripts, and then I guess the publisher platforms like Google Ads and Facebook Ads platforms. But if you have deeper pockets, there's more available to you. So, for example, you can engage your engineering team to clean up the product feeds and automate all the campaign creation and optimization of your campaigns. So for Google, what I like using is SA360, which used to be called double click search. And for paid social, I like using Smartly to automate all my campaigns as well. But if those weren't available for me, next best thing is Excel.
Do you think about like landing pages and content as well? Or is that a separate team typically in a performance marketing or
So in an ideal world, yes, but usually it's a different team managing that. But yeah, there are tools as well that you can use to do landing page testing. So Google Optimize is a free one. There's Optimizely, there's Unbounds, there's all these different tools that you could use to run landing page testing for your digital campaigns as well.
Yep. So when marketers think, let's say 10 years ago, we didn't have creative automation where we could just spin up like 50 ads by putting in a bunch of keywords and templates and then all these permutations come out. What do you think will happen like 10 years from now? Is there something that you're doing now or something that your team is working on that you think can be taken over by automation and it'll just be way more efficient because of the reporting side? Or is there like, what do you see for that?
So actually, Google and Facebook release tools that will just create campaigns by themselves. Not a lot of marketers use it because it kind of lets Google dig deep in your pockets. Like you don't really know what they're targeting. They pretty much have full control. So yes, it's currently happening. You could automate everything by trusting the publishers, but usually advertisers don't because they like full control. They like to, I guess, run their own campaigns and manage everything end to end.
It's possible that when, I'm talking to you in 2030, performance marketing is like, yeah, I just feed Google and Facebook or whatever the platform is at that time, a couple of inputs, then they optimize it for me because they know their platform better or the consumption patterns better. And then I just get customers at the end of it. Is that something you think
Yeah,
can happen?
you can do that right now, actually.
Yeah,
But I think it could definitely happen in 10, 20 years, but I don't think anyone would really trust it because
too
like
much.
it
You know
yeah,
enough,
too
Mark
much
Zuckerberg.
control.
I'm not going to give you more data.
Yeah, exactly.
Our final question is around just how you learn and stuff that you read. So what's the last good book, blog, or article that you read that helped you at work? And if you could, can you give us a summary of your takeaways?
Cool. So I guess the most recent book that I read was called Mindset. I have it right here, actually.
Oh, nice.
So this book is about two main mindsets. So one is a fixed mindset and one is a growth mindset. And this book pretty much tells you how to get into a growth mindset. So people with a fixed mindset think that the skills and I guess the knowledge that they have can't change, and what they have is what they have. So they're more, I guess, stuck in what they're currently doing. People with a growth mindset don't really care about the outcome. They care about the effort to get to the outcome. So even if they don't have the skills right now, they're more inclined to develop those skills. So with this book, I kind of use my learnings to, I guess, influence my team, get them to fail, fail fast, learn from it, and then stand up just so that they could develop their skills. And I also practice that. So like I mentioned earlier on, I like running tests. That's sometimes these tests don't work to what my likings would be. So yeah, like some tests actually fail, learn from that, and then I guess move on.
Raymond, thanks so much for taking the time to hang out with us. I definitely learned a lot about how to do performance marketing in APAC. Is it okay if people look you up on LinkedIn and connect with you?
Sure.
Okay, that's awesome. All right, everyone. Cheers. Next time. See you next
See you
time
guys.
on the next interview. Cheers. Bye.